All right, Mr. Eister?
Stephen Eister, Natural Resources. This next variance is VRB 2353 at 105 East 26 LLC, or the owner is 105 East 26 LLC. The applicant is Stephen Lupin of Lupin Construction LLC. The property address is 109 East 26th Avenue. The zoning for this property is RM16. It went through a rezoning in 2021 to RS50 to RM18 through the Euclidean zoning process. They are requesting to remove one grand tree for the construction of an 8-unit townhome development. The section in question is 27-284.2.5, permit for grand tree removal. The property is here listed. You can see it. It's 3 RS50 parcels that have been combined together to form one larger parcel. I have a better photo of that as well as we go through. So the tree in question is a live oak, 36-inch DBH. The canopy measurements are 45 by 62. The condition is C8, and the mitigation of this tree is 10 type 1 trees at 2.5-inch DBH. These are photos of the grand tree from the arborist report. You can see it has a lean due to competing trees on site. The tree does have the proper growth to support that arch in the structure. The other trees, so you can see the tree circled here is the 36-inch. This is the existing survey. There's a collection of large trees up front of the property. There's a large, like 50-inch ficus over here, and then other large oaks kind of scattered around the site. And that's kind of what led to that growth of that manner. This is the proposed plan. It shows the 8 townhome units. As you guys see in the staff report, there will be additional corrections to this site plan beyond what's proposed for just the grand tree removal. The courtyards would have to shrink to allow for buffers. A DE1 would also be required because of the overlay requirements, because the doors do not face the front of the property, which is to the north of the drawing here, where the drive is and the guest parking. So this is the proposed. This is alternative plan 1. It shows 6 units. This option preserves the tree and the buffering the other trees around the site. This is option alternative site plan 2, which also preserves the grand tree in a courtyard type setting with the 4 townhome units going around, 2 going east to west, and then 2 in the rear going north and south with access off the alley. And then the other ones still have access off that drive down the center. So this is the consideration for the board. Natural Resources found the request inconsistent with tech standards and code. You guys can see my attached memo in your packet. The memo also breaks down the buffers that are required for the east property line and then the south and west, and then just the basic kind of requirements for a townhome development. And if you guys have any questions, I'm available after the applicants present.
All right, thank you. Is the applicant here? All right. If you could state your name, address, and confirm that you've been sworn.
Stephen Lupin, 4931 Southwest Shore Boulevard. I've been sworn in. Thank you. First of all, I think you mentioned something at the beginning about documents that weren't in the packet. I have a revised plan that actually shows the canopy. Okay, I want to make sure I was. All right, so the tree in question with our option number 1 is, as you can see, has a hard lean to the north, and the canopy covers about 50 to 60% of the buildable area. I've taken some different pictures of the tree. This is the tree looking to the north. You can see the lean. The distance from the ground to this part of the tree is approximately 24 feet. this is looking from the west. You can see how the canopy actually cantilevers over where the buildable area would be. Again, showing that it has a hard lean, and the distance from the ground to the main limb is approximately 24 feet. And one more looking to the east, essentially showing the same thing. So the reason I'm showing these pictures is to identify in our options 1 and 2. Let's see, sorry here. I'm going to put these side by side for you. This one here? There we go. All right. So the canopy of the tree actually extends to the north over the buildable area of this proposed structure. If we were to trim the canopy back, we would exceed the 25% that the ISA recommends for pruning of the tree, plus we would be pruning the roots, which would exceed, their recommendations for properly pruning a tree annually. We purchased the property in 2022, and it was already zoned RM18. We were required to present criteria for the board's consideration. The impact of the proposed building structure, building area on the impacted tree, as shown by a survey or drawing of the parcel of the property to scale, accurately depicting the location, crown spread area of the tree, including the minimum protective root zone around the tree. So our proposed development is an 8-unit, 3-story multifamily townhome community, which consists of 2 3-story buildings with 4 units each. The subject Grand Oak is in conflict with one of the proposed buildings and any vehicular traffic entering into the building. Our certified arborist assessed the on-site and adjacent trees in a report, and his findings was issued on May of 2022. He stated that the minimum protective radius shall be 20 feet. The tree has an excessive curvature and an irregular crown spread. If the tree is not removed, the impact will be a loss of 3 units or 37.5% reduction to the project. Whether the proposed building structures can be reasonably reconfigured to preserve the grand tree for removal, including the recommendation by Natural Resources Coordinator or designee. Due to the irregular growth, the canopy spread, the radius of the protected area, we would lose 2 units or 3 units, and the root pruning and of the crown and the pruning of the crown and the root pruning would be excessive and would send the tree into decline. So whether a reduction of the required setbacks for the primary building structure is sufficient to preserve the grand tree requested for removal, the reduction of the required setbacks would not be sufficient to preserve the grand tree due to its location in the center of the property. Due to the irregular growth of the tree, pruning the roots at the 20-foot protective area will only compromise its integrity and reduce the life of the subject tree. So whether alternative construction methods can be utilized to preserve the grand tree requested for the removal up to the critical root zone, again, due to the irregular shape and growth, alternative construction techniques would not prevent an adverse impact of the tree proposed for removal. So in closing, I believe we've met the 5 criteria. It is unique and singular. The tree is irregular, and it impacts nearly 50% of the buildable area for that particular lot. The proposed variance will not substantially interfere with any neighboring properties. The variance request is in harmony with the Tampa Comprehensive Plan and as it relates to redevelopment and multifamily development zoning of RM18, and granting the variance will result in substantial justice done for the owner, neighbor, and the public. I'd like to point out that we purchased this property, it was already zoned RM18, so we did not create our own hardship. And that's all I have.
Right, thank you. That completes your presentation. We'll open it up for anyone who would like to speak on this application.
Excellent, thank you.
Looks like there are a handful of people here. And to everyone who's about to speak, please remember to state your name, your address, and confirm that you've been sworn, and you have 3 minutes.
3 minutes. My name is Justin Rickey. I have been sworn in. My address is 109 East 26th Avenue, Tampa, Florida, 33603. I'm a current member of the Tampa Heights Land Use Committee. I'm a former board member of the Tampa Heights Civic Association. I'm going to read you my response that I've already emailed to all of you, or I believe I've emailed it to you. I feel it's important to express my opposition to this project. As a resident of this street for over 14 years now, I personally oppose this variance. Many of the reasons which our committee has alluded to in the preceding message, but most importantly, the continuing approval of projects that are not activating the street fronts in a way that promotes responsible development and growth. Street front activation is required for pedestrian activity, walkability, transit, as well as small business. Every time a project is approved of this nature, you diminish the full potential of future growth to occur, keeping us in a stagnant automobile-dependent environment. If Tampa wants to be the next big city, responsible development needs to occur in all of our neighborhoods, not just the CRAs. The hardship and practical difficulty for this project are self-created and do not justify a variance being granted to remove the grand tree in question. Per the application, the property is zoned RM16 and allows a maximum of 8 units to be constructed. Failure to grant the variance will result in a reduced unit count, which will create a financial hardship to the developer and reduce tax revenues to the city of Tampa. I believe the removal of the tree is justified based on the location and structure and likelihood of compromising the integrity of tree roots if the tree roots are pruned at the 20-foot protective radius. First, a self-created financial hardship to the developer is not a qualifying hardship. At second reading on May 19th, 2022, City Council approved rezoning the 3 properties to RM18, not RM16 as erroneously stated on the application. Furthermore, maximizing density of the underlying zoning district and the comprehensive plan is not guaranteed. Applicable code requirements must be met to maximize density rights. Code does not restrict density to a particular product type. RM18 allows up to 8 dwelling units on this property, but the developer is not limited to a single-family attached units whose fee simple legal platting restricts the flexibility of the site layout. 8 dwelling units could fit on this property through condominium for sale or apartment for rent type products. A self-imposed choice to build only single-family attached units is not a qualifying hardship. How much time do I have?
You have 1 minute, 30 seconds left.
Second, and most importantly, the project as designed does not meet the City of Tampa Development Code 27-282.9C1, single-family attached design standards, which reads, the ground floor entrances, front doors of the dwelling unit shall face a street right-of-way, not including alleys, rather than the side or corner lot lines. Entrances may face interior courts, plazas, or similar design element with the approval of an alternative design by the zoning administrator. I'm done. I apologize. Thank you for your time.
My name is Carol Ann Bennett. I live at 4116 West Santiago Street, and I have been sworn. There are multiple problems with this site plan. This property is zoned for multifamily. They can build 8 apartments or condos. There is no zoning requirement to build townhomes. Just because they want to build 8 large townhomes does not mean they are entitled to it. The only entitlement they have is what they could pull permits for on the day they bought the land. They knew the grand tree limited them when they bought the property. By hoping for something that they are not entitled to, they were speculating on a land deal. That's on them. The citizens should not be made to pay the price of our critically shrinking tree canopy just because they speculated on a land deal or did not do their due diligence. They can build 8 condos and easily configure them around the tree. That would provide a lovely piece of green space under the shade of this grand live oak that benefits the whole neighborhood with heat reduction, oxygen, and flood mitigation. Even without the tree, their site plan is so flawed, it will probably be denied. In June, city staff gave them a long list of design requirements they had not met and told them to resubmit a new design that complies with city code. You have a copy. Even though they got a continuance, they still have not complied with that mandate. In addition, there are several other building code violations that city council will not approve. Code requires front doors to face a street. Their front doors face the fence in the side yard. This requires a design exception. City council isn't approving front doors facing a courtyard. They certainly won't approve this absurd design. City council is also not approving these tunnel designs with a driveway down the middle. This project must be completely redesigned, even if you grant the variance. If you approve this variance, it runs with the land. That means they could remove the tree and then be forced to design a plan that would have saved the tree, but it will be too late. That would be a tragedy that will negatively impact this neighborhood for decades. Tampa Heights Civic Association invited the builder to meet with them, but they did not show up. The neighborhood would love to see 8 apartments built on this site. This would provide flexibility to save the tree. They could pull permits tomorrow for a project like that because they wouldn't need variances or a design exception. The VRB is required to consider if the grand tree can be preserved through reconfiguration. This project must be reconfigured to comply with city code, so it is going to be reconfigured eventually. Preserving this grand live oak is a no-brainer. Please deny this variance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Lorraine Perino, president of the Tampa Tree Advocacy Group, and I have not been sworn in.
We'll go ahead and take care of that. And if there's anyone else here who hasn't been sworn, go ahead and stand now and let's all get sworn in.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to and affirm that you will tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. How many of you on this board have read the city's 2021 tree canopy and urban forest analysis study released last April? The study states that so many grand trees have been removed from the city that they are now considered to be rare in Tampa. Quote, Tampa has a young forest and young trees, 3 inches or less. Old growth trees are rare. The study documents Tampa's tree canopy to have so deteriorated in the past 5 years that it is now, quote, at its lowest since monitoring began in 2006. Tampa's tree canopy has now decreased to 30%. The study goes on to state that, quote, the current 30% tree canopy coverage is a critical threshold for the health and well-being of its residents and of the environment. Tampa has experienced a continuous decline in tree canopy since 2011 and has lost 13% of our trees in the last 10 years, an area equivalent to 4 times the size of Davis Island, unquote. The science proves that Tampa cannot afford to waste even one more of its few remaining rare grand trees to satisfy greedy developers or irresponsible or clueless residents. Yet a reading of the private arborist report shows that developing this property would mean the destruction of no fewer than between 7 and 13 trees from this parcel, including 1 healthy and protected grand oak. It would be very easy to instead simply reconfigure the design of the proposed development as the city has proposed and preserve one of the last remaining rare grand oaks in Tampa. This past spring, the mayor proposed planting 30,000 trees in the city by the year 2023 in a valiant effort to regrow Tampa's deteriorating tree canopy. Preserving this rare grand live oak would be a significant step in that direction. Natural Resources has rated this grand tree removal inconsistent. Please vote to preserve this healthy grand live oak tree. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Pamela Jackson-Haney, and I have been sworn in.
And your address.
I just wanted to point out that, again, that Natural Resources found this plan inconsistent. The one thing that did stand out to me in Mr. Eister's staff report was the fourth or fifth paragraph down, saying according to table 284.3.3, single-family attached development needs to meet the following requirements: 350 square feet of green space per townhouse and 1 tree per 1,500 square feet of parcel, excluding area of building footprints, publicly contributed platted wetlands. So that still, as far as I can tell, because I did look into Solitude, still needed to be submitted. So also, from what I can tell, one of the alternate plans would enable him to save the tree and also build his 8 units as he would like. And that's this one. Is this up? Yeah, that's this one. So the tree would be like it would be a courtyard, which would be really lovely, having that tree as the centerpiece, especially since the arborist said that it's in fair condition, C8. It does have a lean, but as Mr. Eister said, the tree is able to live on even with that lean. And the arborist said you could also be able to get as close as 15 feet with conditions. So maybe, the conditions would have to be, pier and lentil or whatever other kind of, permeable ground surface that needs to be used. And it may require a little bit of creativity and effort, but it can be done. So the other thing I wanted to point out was, I happen to have this same tree in my yard, or a similar tree, that I've had several arborists look at too. I've lived here for 30 years. I don't know if you can see this or not, but this is my tree. It leans quite prominently, instead of to the left like this one, but to the right and over my driveway that I share with my neighbor. And so because of that lean, we've had it looked at several times. And every arborist has said, it's fine. It doesn't need a lot more pruning because of the type of tree it is, a live oak. I have to keep it pruned 6 feet off of my roof, which is very easy for my homeowner's insurance company. And as you can see, it's very close to my house. It's not the required 15 feet, most likely, but it is. My house is on pier and lentil, so the front porch allows for that, and that can be done here too. So we're at a critical point with our tree canopy, has been mentioned many times. These grand trees are rare. It's time to keep every single one of them from this point forward. They will prove beneficial to the community and this housing structure. Thank you.
Can you state your address before you go?
Oh, sure.
I think you forgot that.
3014 West Harborview Avenue.
Thank you.
Sure. I'm sorry. The whole time. Oh, okay, yeah. Sorry, I don't know what's mine and what's not. There's a bunch of stuff up here that I don't think is mine. You did? Okay.
May I retrieve my documents? Apologies. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Stephanie Pointer. I live at 7709 Landcare Lane, Tampa, Florida, 33616.
And you've been sworn?
I'm sorry, yes, I have been sworn. Hardship means that you can't live without something, that you need something. I think that this plan right here shows that this is a want, not a need. They want to make as much money as humanly possible off of this lot. Is that a need? Nobody made them buy this lot. They knew they were going to have to do something about it. Very rarely do you see a neighborhood association support the number of units somebody wants. And yet, here we are. We have neighborhood associations who are saying, yes, you should build 8 units. Maybe the developer should consider these 8 units because they developed a plan that they don't have to take out this tree. This tree that was there before they bought the property, before they were born, before probably his grandparents were born. But yet, we get up every day and think, oh, this is a hardship. I need this. That's not the case here. This is a want, not a need. And we need to know the difference between the two. This tunnel plan that they had showed you, that's not going to fly.
It will not fly with city council. They will not approve it. The garage doors are not big enough. So you've got all kinds of issues with their proposed site plan, and they didn't bother to throw this up here and say, oh, well, we could do this, but we don't want to. See, there's a want. Hardships are needs. This shows that they don't need it. It shows that they want it. Thank you. Have a good evening.
All right. Anyone else that would like to speak on this application?
No, sorry. Anybody
Seeing
else?
no- All right, I'm going to open it up for questions from the board.
Doug, a rebuttal?
Yeah, well, we will probably have questions for you, so
Okay, sorry.
come on back up. I can go ahead and start.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
The site plan, the second site plan that Ms. Pointer just had up there, do you have a copy of that?
Yep.
Just have a question about it.
Sure.
Okay, so the tree is in the center of that courtyard, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and what is the distance between, so the tree arches, what's the distance between the tree and the ground where it arches?
It's approximately 24 feet.
Okay, so these buildings would fit under that tree?
No,
So this is not a viable,
it is not a viable plan.
okay, so I guess my question would be, why present a plan like this if it's not viable?
We were
Because the tree
required,
is not a, I see, okay, I see
we
what
were
you're saying.
required to submit 3 plans. And that
Plans.
was the only thing that fit on the site.
Okay, so this plan is not viable.
This plan is not viable.
Thank you.
Okay, so I have, based on that, I have a question for Mr. Eister. So let's talk a little bit about your finding of inconsistency. Was one of the reasons based on this site plan that's up on the overhead?
So, again, Stephen Eister with Natural Resources. My finding of inconsistent is, kind of like mentioned before, the max use of the property is 8 units. In my mind, like if we look at this plan with the canopy conflicts, say if you got rid of those 2 units up to the north, you now have 6 units with no canopy conflicts. So, or if I see other design factors like the front doors that aren't gonna face, so that's gonna have to be a redesign as well. So it's based off the tree, but then all the other factors that go into the site design that may have to change as well. So, what I looked at was, you could easily do 4. The other side is the trickier side because of the canopy conflicts. But the site could easily probably accommodate 6 units.
Okay, and we saw a site plan that did that, right?
There's this site plan that has 8 units, with the canopy conflicts. You could do 6 without any conflicts. Or you have the one that splits it and you have a building on each side, but from the canopy conflict photo he showed, that would only probably get them 5 units.
Okay.
So probably a hybrid of this would get them the most without any conflicts.
Okay.
And if you're looking at that plan, Steve,
Yes,
it looks like they could actually maybe do 7, because only the one at the very top is a problem.
that's true. If you wanted to kind of work with that up to that second back unit, you could get rid of that south or that east-west unit
Yep.
and
at
have
the very
7,
top.
and then have access from the alley.
Okay, so they could do 7 with that plan as long as they worked with it.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is notwithstanding sort of the tree radius that's shown here, they couldn't actually build that one unit
Yeah,
to
so
the
it's,
north.
you got the twofold. You got the 20-foot protective radius, but then you have the canopy conflicts due to the arching shape. Say if we had more elevation, they could possibly slide in a unit, but at 24 feet high, if they were doing 3 units, which is probably about 36 foot high, like how high of,
The tree actually turns and is pretty consistent.
and then how high is the 3-unit townhome structure?
They're 35 feet.
35 feet. So then you have that 10-foot conflict,
Got it.
which would remove you would be left with a totem pole if you saved it and did a 3-foot or a 3-story building that close.
Can I add to
Hold on,
yeah.
I've got to, so I'd like to talk a little bit more about the tree, because
Yeah.
just from the pictures, the tree looks like, I wouldn't want to walk under it much. It would be, it's a little dangerous to me. So but I'm not a tree expert, so.
Oh, no, this
tell
is,
me a little bit about.
you know, I have no problem answering the tree question. So when you have the competing canopies, the trees are gonna have a bit, what's called a phototrophic lean, to grow towards where they can have the most access to the sun. So this site is pretty wooded, like stated, if you guys look at the survey, there's probably about 15 to 20 trees on this site. So as that tree grew and developed, it developed that lean as well. So if you guys go to and look at it, you have a lot more structural wood on one side of the tree compared to the back side of the tree to support that lean. So kind of like it can hang over your driveway, it can have that lean, and you could sit under it. I'd be okay sitting under it, having lunch, or what have you. Or in like a courtyard setting like this.
So maybe more my question is, would you build a structure, like even a one-story structure underneath it? It feels like that would be
I think if you could maintain the 20-foot protective radius and not have any major canopy conflicts, I think you could do a one-story structure, because once you get to two-story, you're hitting that 24 range where this canopy starts. So once you add
could you, I mean, I'm thinking more of the practicality of, you know, we do get hurricanes, trees fall over neighborhoods all the time. Is that do you still have those pictures of those? I mean, when I looked at those trees, there was like nothing on one side. It's all hanging out to one. It looks like it blew over in a storm.
Right. So the way you gotta look at it is, this tree, say, has been growing, say, 40 years, just to give you an estimate. It's always grown that way. So the tree has developed to grow in that structure. So the root system has probably more roots on the back side of the tree to support that lean, probably less on the front side because it doesn't need them. And then it has the wood structure as well. So like when you cut, like say if you cut this tree, the growth rings on one side would be significantly smaller than the growth rings on this side, because the inside is putting on a lot more growth to support that leaning structure.
Okay, so maybe put differently, is this tree more likely to blow over in a storm than a tree that's standing up straight?
It's been here 50 years and it hasn't blown over yet. So the roots are doing their job.
So you mentioned, I'm sorry if I'm interrupting, do you want to go? You mentioned the root structure, and I just want to make sure I understand that, because it's not just the canopy that we need to look at, it's also the roots underneath. So tree is coming up and leaning, where's our, to the northwest, right?
Correct.
Northeast. And the root structure is going to be heaviest south of it?
Correct.
Okay, so when we've got this site plan here with the structures to the south of the tree,
Correct.
are those structures going to be impeding upon the root structure of that tree?
I think if
we were just working with those.
Yeah, if you're looking at the proposed plan that kind of shows that U shape,
Yep.
which is kind of the one we've been using, the proposed footer is actually going to be probably 25 to 30 feet away. The minimum protective radius the city requires to not impact the tree is 20 feet. That's that hash line you see around the trunk of the tree. So those footer impacts would be outside of the protective radius. And if we have additional concerns at the time of building, we'll ask for like an airspace report. So if structural roots are discovered, we'll ask for alternative construction methods to make sure we're not creating a more hazardous situation.
Would it be typical that a tree like this, because of the way it's leaning, it would grow farther than 20? I mean, I know our standard is 25 feet, but because it has to put so many roots out to counterbalance this, would you expect that there'd be more roots outside of 25 feet?
So again, after we can enforce the 20 feet, if we see any additional concerns, we can ask for additional information, like an air spade, where basically they take out like a high pressurized compressor, they trench out where the footer is and they assess it. If they find a 4-inch root, then we're like, okay, you guys need to do alternative construction methods to not further impact the tree and preserve those roots on that side. But it's subsurface, so at this point, I did not go out there with my shovel to figure that out, so it would be at time of construction. And they would also, if they preserve the tree, would get setback reductions. So, kind of mentioned in your comments, they could actually reduce, I think they have a 15-foot rear setback. So that could be reduced by 40% if they needed more space from the tree.
That's a great point. I was gonna ask that question. I'm glad you brought that up. The current plans that are being presented, they do not include any setback reductions?
No, currently not.
Okay.
These are just the standard setbacks. They do have their buffers that they have to contend with as well.
Right.
But I think, let me double check my.
But in order to preserve trees, we will allow certain percentage of setback, reduction to the
Correct.
setback. So the rear setback could be reduced.
Yeah,
a
because
few
the south and west property lines only require a 5-foot buffer. So they have 15 right now.
Right.
So they could probably pick up another, probably 6 feet.
I mean, if they come to the south, there's a 28-inch tree that would have to go.
Yeah,
I'm
but
just, it's surrounded by trees, so if you're removing those buffers.
Yeah, you're right.
They're gonna be taking trees out any which way you
Correct.
shift. Do they still get those benefits for saving the grand? And
So-
they'll be allowed to take out everything else
So
around
the
it?
28-inch tree that's in question is in poor condition.
Okay.
I think it's noted in the arborist report. I don't even, if I remember correctly, I don't even think it's alive. So it wouldn't even count towards or against
That's
them
an option.
in
So
mitigation.
just for clarification, if they start moving things around and it's a smaller tree, they still would be able to get the benefit by saving the grand tree?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Eister? All right, any other questions for the applicant or anyone? Mr. Foltz, are you good? Okay. All right, then applicant, you have 5 minutes for rebuttal.
A couple things. First of all, there's, if we were to, can we turn this back on here? If we were to move this building south 6 foot, it really would not justify any additional room for this unit. Plus, there's utility lines that run along this. This is an alley, it's an easement. I don't see that being a benefit. The canopy is the problem. The canopy actually extends, it's 51 feet approximately from the trunk of the tree to the outreach of the canopy. And it's pretty consistent at 24 feet. If we were to trim the tree, if you look up under the tree, it's like a lollipop. There's very large branches, and then there's foliage at the end of the tree. By the time we trim the foliage to allow for construction of this unit, you'll have big empty limbs with no foliage. So that would not be beneficial to the life of the tree. Obviously, I know some people have a different opinion here, but we're not in the business to tear down trees. In fact, there was a 52-inch oak on another project of ours that the city approved to be removed, and we took extreme efforts to preserve it. And I have proof of that. So in this particular situation, we feel that this tree is, one, it obviously is impeding our right to develop reasonably, and two, any attempt to try to preserve the tree by trimming, root pruning, is only going to harm the tree. And I think that's all I have to say. And I would appreciate an approval. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to close the public hearing and open it up for discussion from the board.
It's tough.
It's
Tough.
You guys?
Well, I mean, the thing about the tree is the way the tree is growing. You could build something underneath, but the chances of insuring it, it's not going to happen. No insurance company is going to insure something under a tree like that. So I mean, the other proposals that they have, I mean, are irrelevant. They really are. There's nothing that's going to fall underneath that tree that is gonna be insurable.
Well, and so when I look at, the factors, you know, one of the factors is really one of the more important factors is whether the applicant presented alternative site plans, which they did here, but one of the factors is also whether the site can be reasonably reconfigured. And so sort of the question that I'm weighing is whether building 4 or 5 or 6 units means that the property can be, you know, whether building 4 or 5 or 6 units is a reasonable reconfiguration of this property.
Agreed. They may not get 8, they get 6.
Yeah, so that's kind of the way I've tried to look at these is, you know, I do not believe and I do not interpret the rules that the city has given us to follow to mean that whatever a developer designs, they get to build unless they can reasonably reconfigure it to save the tree. I don't see that as what the city's intent was when it made these factors. The factors were designed to try and, as best we can, preserve trees and allow people to continue to use their property in a reasonable manner. And I do not believe that maximizing the amount of space that we can, the amount of units that we can put onto a property necessarily is that's what we get to do because that's the only reasonable way to go. I do see that there's ample use for this property. It may not be with the 8 36-foot townhomes that are planned here. Maybe it's 7, maybe it's 6, or maybe there's another way to do what they want to do. But I just don't see that the city intended us to say, well, you draw it. If it doesn't work with the tree, take the tree down. That's just not how I read that factor.
And they can do 8 units in an apartment configuration so that you don't have an enclosed garage for each unit for 2 cars and so on and so forth. So you can get 8 units in there, it may just not be these 8 units.
Yeah, and I don't want to be in the business of redesigning the properties for them. I'm just saying, I can look at this, and under the existing proposals, they can get a reasonable 6 to 7 units out of this.
Yeah.
I get it, that tree's gonna lean across there, and you're not gonna build anything underneath there. That's not a reasonable approach. But there's still ample ways to use this property, and still, even under the way that they were factoring, I think there's a reasonable reconfiguration here. So I under that scenario, and with that interpretation, I don't support the removal. I do not, by the way, I do not read any ill intent into this developer. I think this developer is doing what they need to do. Just don't think that they can get everything they want here.
You ready for me?
I agree.
My biggest, and the hardest thing for me on this one is the tree just doesn't look.
Well, remember, we're not under a hardship criteria, and that's something that the city probably needs to do a better job of in our applications, because it does very clearly say the grand tree removal factors, and then our applications still have that hardship form in there, so it kind of tricks people into using the hardship format. But we're not under a hardship here. This is a tree removal factors under 27-284.
What is the grade of the tree? Do we have that?
C8.
Yeah.
And remind me, what is that?
C8 or C9.
What's the expected life?
Steve
on
can
that one?
probably answer that.
It depends. Does staff answering questions count? I don't want to get more testimony. It's in the application.
All right, with that, does anyone have a motion?
I can do it. All right. I move that the variance request for case VRP -23-53 for property located at 109 East 26th Avenue, for the removal of a grand tree be denied due to the failure of petitioner to meet the burden of proof that the tree would be rendered hazardous by proposed construction that cannot be reasonably reconfigured when considering the factors set forth in 27-284.2.5F, the city code for grand tree removal, specifically that there's been no utilization of setback reductions, that the reasonable reconfiguration as demonstrated by some of the alternative plans suggests that it is a viable, there are viable options here, and that it is simply not necessary to maximize all of the units on this property in the fashion that the developer has proposed.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Feldman, second by Ms. Walrath. All those in favor of denial, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? None. Right. Your variance request is denied. You can appeal it to city council.